All right, we're going to read chapter 8 of A Course in Miracles, The Journey Back. Chapter 8, The Journey Back. This is the last section. It's section 9, and it's called Healing as Corrected Perception. I said before that the Holy Spirit is the answer. He is the answer to everything because he knows what the answer to everything is. The ego does not know what a real question is, although it asks an endless number. Yet you can learn this as you learn to question the value of the ego and thus establish your ability to evaluate its questions. When the ego tempts you to sickness, do not ask the Holy Spirit to heal the body, for this would merely be to accept the ego's belief that the body is the proper aim of healing. Ask rather that the Holy Spirit teach you the right perception of the body, for perception alone can be distorted. Only perception can be sick because only perception can be wrong. Wrong perception is the wish that things be as they are not. The reality of everything is totally harmless because total harmlessness is the condition of its reality. It is also the condition of your awareness of its reality. You do not have to seek reality. It will seek you and find you when you meet its conditions. Its conditions are part of what it is. And this part only is up to you. The rest is of itself. You need to do so little because your little part is so powerful that it will bring the whole to you. Accept then your little part and let the whole be yours. Wholeness heals because it is of the mind. All forms of sickness, even unto death, are physical expressions of the fear of awakening. They are attempts to reinforce sleeping out of fear of waking. This is a pathetic way of trying not to see by rendering the faculties for seeing ineffectual. Quote, rest in peace, unquote, is a blessing for the living, not the dead, because rest comes from waking, not from sleeping. Sleep is withdrawing, waking is joining. Dreams are illusions of joining because they reflect the ego's distorted notions about what joining is. Yet the Holy Spirit, too, has use for sleep and can use dreams on behalf of waking if you will let him. How you wake is the sign of how you have used sleep. To whom did you give it? Under which teacher did you place it? Whenever you wake dispiritedly, it was not given to the Holy Spirit. Only when you awaken joyously have you utilized sleep according to his purpose. You can indeed be, quote, drugged, unquote, by sleep if you have misused it on behalf of sickness. Sleep is no more a form of death than death is a form of unconsciousness. Complete unconsciousness is impossible. You can rest in peace only because you are awake. Healing is released from the fear of waking and the substitution of the decision to wake. The decision to wake is the reflection of the will to love, since all healing involves replacing fear with love. The Holy Spirit cannot distinguish among degrees of error, for if he taught that one form of sickness is more serious than another, he would be teaching that one error can be more real than another. His function is to distinguish only between the false and the true, replacing the false with the true. The ego, which always wants to weaken the mind, tries to separate it from the body in an attempt to destroy it. Yet the ego actually believes that it is protecting it. This is because the ego believes that mind is dangerous and that to make mindless is to heal. But to make mindless is impossible, since it would mean to make nothing out of what God created. The ego despises weakness, even though it makes every effort to induce it. The ego wants only what it hates. To the ego, this is perfectly sensible. Believing in the power of attack, the ego wants attack. The Bible enjoins you to be perfect, to heal all errors, to take no thought of the body as separate, and to accomplish all things in my name. This is not my name alone, for ours is a shared identification. The name of God's Son is one, and you are enjoined to do the works of love because we share this oneness. Our minds are whole because they are one. If you are sick, you are withdrawing from me. Yet you cannot withdraw from me alone, You can only withdraw from yourself and me. You have surely begun to realize that this is a very practical course and one that means exactly what it says. I would not ask you to do things you cannot do, and it is impossible that I could do things you cannot do. Given this, and given this quite literally, nothing can prevent you from doing exactly what I ask, and everything argues for your doing it. I give you no limits because God lays none upon you. When you limit yourself, we are not of one mind, and that is sickness. Yet sickness is not of the body, but of the mind. All forms of sickness are signs that the mind is split and does not accept a unified purpose. The unification of purpose, then, is the Holy Spirit's only way of healing. This is because it is the only level at which healing means anything. The reestablishing of meaning in a chaotic thought system is the way to heal it. Your task is only to meet the conditions for meaning, since meaning itself is of God. Yet your return to meaning is essential to His, because your meaning is part of His. Your healing, then, is part of His health, since it is part of His wholeness. He cannot lose this, but you can not know it. Yet it is still His will for you, and His will must stand forever and in all things. Okay. Yesterday, Jesus has been talking about the body and sickness, and body as a communication device, the body as a means as opposed to an end. It's not an end in itself. It's a communication device. It's a learning device that the Holy Spirit uses to help us to return back to the love that we are, which is beyond the body. And to do that, we have to recognize that we have chosen to make ourselves mindless. And Jesus assures us here that we cannot make ourselves totally mindless, because to do that would be to make what God created impotent, which is impossible. And remember that Jesus said earlier, and keeps saying, that the ego is not real. So only God is real. And in order for us to realize that we are one with God, and that we are one with Jesus, and we share that identification. Jesus says that here. We share the same identification. We share the name, the Son of God. We are all the Son of God, and we all share the same mind. And that's the amazing thing, is that none of us really are any different. We all have the same right-minded thought system and the same wrong-minded thought system. The wrong-minded thought system is the ego's. The right-minded is the Holy Spirit's. And we all can do what Jesus is saying. He says it here. This is a very practical course. You can do exactly what I'm saying. Don't think that you cannot do what I'm saying you can do. We'll also say that, Jesus says earlier here, that sickness really is not of the body. You got to take it back to the root, back to the mind. Don't be mindless. You got to take it back to the mind. It all goes back to how you perceive. If you perceive in a right-minded way, which would be the way the Holy Spirit perceives, then health is the result. And to the extent to which you are perceiving according to the way the ego, the ego's agenda, you will experience sickness on whatever level it is. And there's different forms of sickness: physical, mental, emotional, psychological. Another thing, let's read this, where Jesus says, wrong perception is the wish that things be as they are not. The reality of everything is totally harmless. Why is it harmless? Because it does not need to attack, right? Which means that we do not, we do not need the ego. We do not need to attack in order to live in this world. We do not need to fight with our brothers and sisters. We do not need to compete and judge and do all the things that we think we do. As long as we're allied with the ego, we think that we need, because we're afraid, and so we do all these things that are actually keeping us from knowing what we truly are, which is really the only thing we really want to know is what we truly are, which is love. So we all want love, but we're looking for it in the wrong places. And that's okay. Jesus is saying it doesn't matter, really. Ultimately, time is an illusion. Take all the time you need. What does it matter, really? So feel free to enjoy the illusion as long as you want to, really. When you don't want the illusion anymore, you'll give it up. And, it's not necessarily better. That would be a judgment. It's not necessarily better to give up the illusion than not to give up the illusion. Why would that be better? It's all what you want. So let's not put any judgment on that. But let me read this. The reality of everything is totally harmless because total harmlessness is the condition of its reality. It is also the condition of your awareness of its reality. Which means that you have to become totally harmless yourself by following the way of the Holy Spirit to know what that is. In other words, you have to be it to see it. Let's put it that way. You won't see it until you are it. Believing is seeing in a sense, but it's more correct to say you will see it. You have to be it to see it. And when you meet the conditions of reality, which would be to unlearn the ego, to decondition from the ego, you will meet the conditions of reality, which is the conditions of God. God doesn't have any conditions, but so to speak, God doesn't have any conditions. It's really more undoing the ego. When you undo the ego, when you remove everything that is false, you will arrive at what is true. You're not adding anything. You're only taking away what is false. To know again what is eternally true, what has been and still is and will always be true. Another great line here that's worth mentioning is, okay, let's see. Sorry, sorry, Oh, okay. All forms of sickness, even unto death, are physical expressions of the fear of awakening. All forms of sickness, even unto death, are physical expressions of the fear of awakening. So what are we most afraid of? When bottom line is we are afraid of awakening. We are afraid of what it would look like if we had no ego. That is a scary, it's the scariest thing in the world. To the ego, which is really nothing, which is what we are to some extent allied with the ego. So we think that if we didn't have the ego, we wouldn't exist. Which is not true, but that's what the ego wants us to think. And will do everything in its power for us to think that. And Jesus is just, reminding us again and again that without, we think that without the ego, everything would be lost. And no, Jesus is saying, without the ego, you are restored to the true power and glory of the Son of God, which is what you truly are. You are the love of God itself. You are the kingdom. You are no different. So all you need to do is trust the message, trust the messenger, trust that Jesus is not handing you a line here. He is handing you a line. He's handing you the only lifeline that you really need and want. And let's just bring in one other thing here. A lot of people, including myself, go to sleep disturbed. And they wake up disturbed. And they might not even, you might go to sleep, not disturbed, and you wake up with, this heaviness, this moroseness, or this fog, and maybe some guilt, and maybe some dread, and maybe some, your funky feelings. And through doing this process that Jesus is outlining, this whole course, I really feel that what happens is that fog lifts more and more. It doesn't necessarily go like that. It will, there will be moments of great clarity, and there will be times when you go back. But the movement, every step is a step forward, even if it's a step backward. There are no wrong moves, really. And over time, you will awaken more and more with the joy of being, as opposed to that being in that funk and being in the whatever depressed state you're in. And depression, let's put it this way too, that depression is a continuum. So some people are in deep depression, various degrees of deep depression. Most people, you could say, are in a lesser degree of depression, but they're still depressed, but they can function, and they can even look, happy on the surface, and fool even themselves. But if we look at it, just about all of us are depressed about life. And Jesus is saying that even here, even in this world, we can feel joy. We can feel the joy of spirit, and we can live in the joy of spirit. Why the hell not? And why the hell would you not want to live in the joy of spirit? And all it takes is for you to take Jesus's hand, but remember that it's not about Jesus, like the name Jesus, or it's not. If the name Jesus or the whole idea of Jesus rubs you the wrong way, use another image, something else that inspires you. Maybe it's Elvis. I'm kidding, but it could be. Maybe it is, for some people it is Elvis, actually. You know, it could be anyone that you look to as a symbol of unconditional love and joy and peace. So it doesn't have to be Jesus, but as Jesus said to Helen, and it's actually in the Course in Miracles. You know, it doesn't have to be. You don't have to think of me. But it might be helpful because for most people, Jesus is that symbol of unconditional love and peace and forgiveness and joy. So anyway, enough said. Thank you for listening, and hope this was helpful. Feel free to leave a comment or message, feedback. I would always love to hear your thoughts. Godspeed, and I'll see you next time, Chapter 9. Stay tuned.